This is going to be a tutorial on how to contour with Surfer 8. I am now in the Nate Citrix environment. So as I go into the geological technology folder, I will see a list of offerings and I will be launching Surfer 8. Full disclosure, Surfer is now up to version 18. Unfortunately, the licensing costs for Surfer 18 are quite steep. And at Nate, all we use Surfer for potentially is for doing small contour assignments. Surfer 8 is an offering that we still have from the provider for free, so it actually works just as well. So I'm going to launch Surfer 8. And the first thing I'm going to do is look at the fact that I've been thrown into a plot window and I have no information. I just basically have a blank 8.5 by 11-inch sheet of paper, a virtual sheet of paper, and now I need to consider the data that I'm going to import. So if I do File Open, I need to find where my data is going to be stored. Now, what I have done is I'll just close this briefly, and I'm just going to go show you my Microsoft Excel sheet. So previously, and this data is associated with the EM31 lab from Geology 2342, the geophysics course. I have 26 rows of data, and I have it distilled into 3 columns. Columns A, B, and C, which represent an easting, a northing, and an elevation, and these are UTM measurements. Okay, so previously as part of this lab, I have done a separate conversion from degrees decimal to UTM coordinates, and I have the associated elevation information, and this is what I want to essentially contour on my contour map using Surfer. So I have previously done this in Excel. Excel is a great way of getting your data ready for Surfer. But if I want to see if Surfer is going to be able to read this data, I have to go ahead and import this data into Surfer. So what I would recommend is I go into Grid and go into the Data menu. And it's saying, okay, well, you want to open you want to open a file. Where is your file going to be? And this becomes a little bit tricky when we're using Citrix, is to conceptualize where your data is going to be. As I do File Open this PC, this is the virtual PC that Citrix is running off of. This isn't your PC. So I have to navigate to find my PC from this list. And if I do so, you'll see something called a local disk. And this is actually the computer that is my local computer. This local disk, also labeled drive C, is the Citrix disk. So if I were to look on the hard drive, how my hard drive is labeled that I'm physically running right now that my data is on, it's called RickJ-LT. Okay, that is different than the Citrix disk C. So sometimes that's the hardest part of this assignment or this task, is finding where your data is on, especially if you're working on a remote PC like I am. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to double click, and now I am not on the Citrix PC, I'm on my local PC. And what I've done for ease of use in this demonstration is I put my information on my user desktop. So again, I'm going to navigate in the Windows environment to users. I'm going to look for myself as a user, which is Rick J. And then I'm going to look at my desktop. And I have a folder here already set aside called Surfer 8 files for EM31 lab. Okay, so this is where my data is from, and my elevation data is right here. So I could go ahead and double click on this file. And what's going to happen is Surfer is going to read that information, and it's going to ask, okay, well, how do you want me to break it up? Do I want column A to be easting? Do I want column B to be northing? And do I want column C to be elevation? And in my case, that is true. But if for any other reason, if you have your columns in a different order, with column Z being that of which we're to plot, I'm able to change that order here within these drop-down menus. I also have the option of seeing what are the minimum and the maximum extents and the individual spacing of my map. And I would suggest leave those for now. Those are based on the X and the Y data from column A and column B. And that's going to fully define the extent of my map. I also have the option of running a grid report. Again, you could toggle it on or off. Essentially, if Surfer runs into any problems or encounters any problems importing this data and building what we call a grid file, that will show up in the grid report. So I would leave that box checked, and I'm okay with how A, B, and C are going to be imported and assigned to data columns X, Y, and Z. Again, we have 25 data points. I had 26 items in my file, but remember the first row was for the header, was from the easting, the northing, and the elevation. Surfer knows that, expects that, and knows that my data is actually going to start on line 2 of my Excel spreadsheet. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to click OK. I've already created actually a grid file because I've done this previously. If you have not done this previously, you will not get this dialog box that asks you if you want to replace the existing grid file. So I'm just going to say yes. Again, if you haven't done this before, you will not get this option provided to you. Okay, and what I immediately got was a gridding report. It came through fairly quickly. How quickly this does get created and reported to you really depends on how many users are in the Nate Citrix environment. For me this morning here, it's a 9:45. It doesn't appear like we have a lot of users, but sometimes I have been using Citrix where just generating this grid report would take up to a minute. So again, it really depends on the amount of bandwidth that we have allocated to a Surfer at the moment. So as I scan through, I really don't see anything that's going to highlight, or if I have something that is an obvious error in the gridding, it will come up as an obvious error. So you don't need to save this report, just kind of scan it to see if you have any errors associated with the importing of your data. I'm just going to go ahead and close it. It will ask me if I want to save the report. It's report 1, and I don't really have a use for it, so I'm going to say no. Okay, well, great. Now I still have nothing on my plot window. That's because I haven't told Surfer, what to do with the data. Okay, so for us in geophysics, what we want to do is we want to map the data, and we want to make a contour map, and it's going to be a new contour map. So it asks me, okay, based on which file do you want to make this contour map on? And I have done previous work. That's why you see other options here. But the one that we just made through the import of the data was called a Surfer grid file. So I'm going to select my ELEV file. That's my elevation data file that Surfer has already imported. And you can see here it was just made November 11th, 2020 at 9:44. Obviously, it's this file because these other ones were done, in the summer. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and click open, and it's going to generate automatically my contour map with a set of defaults. Okay, it's not too pretty yet, but I do see that I do have data in there, which is good. Again, if you want to zoom in and resize the window, you definitely can. Okay, and again, you have different viewing options too. You could, fit it to the window, and you can make it bigger or smaller accordingly. Okay. Now, probably what you want to do is you want to make this a little bit easier to visualize. I see that I have some other rather odd contour intervals, 697, 702, 707, and again, that's in meters, but that's a bit hard to conceptualize. We like to think in much kind of easier numbers, maybe in tens or in fives. So I could basically click the map and get some options, or I could left click on the contours menu on the left hand side, and it'll come up with the contours properties window. And from here, I have options of smoothing out the contours. Right now, you'll see that they're a bit jagged, so I could apply a smoothing algorithm to basically make them a little bit more rounded if I wish. Okay. At this resolution, I don't actually know if I'm going to see much of a difference. I just clicked apply, and it was very subtle. Again, because my data is at a fairly coarse level. And you can tell that by my 25 data points over such a large area, it's only going to get so smooth, but it did help it out a little bit. Again, and I could change the level information, I could change the scale, so on and so forth. Okay. So I could click on fill contours. If I apply that, it's going to give me a grayscale, a color scale between the contours. That again makes it a little bit easier to visualize. If I click on color scale on the right hand side, it gives me the corresponding color scale. So I could tell that as I go higher in elevation, I actually have a lighter color. Towards the north, I have a lower elevation, so it's darker. Again, it's in black and white. I could change this, of course, and that will be done in the next window. I'll be in the levels window. So by default, Surfer is going to scan my information, and I only have elevation level information from 762 meters to 711, and hence that's what gets shown in my map window. It's kind of weird because I have contour labels at 702, 707, 597. I could go ahead and I could fix that right now. So what if we just want to label every 5? Well, I guess it has done it every 5, but it's done it starting at a weird increment. Here under the label, if I just double click under yes, I could turn off that label for 762. And maybe I want to turn one on for 695. I'll turn off 597. I'll turn on 700, so on and so forth. Let's just turn on every 5th contour, but at a more visually appealing scale. And notice none of that has changed until I hit apply. And when I do hit apply, it is now changed within the map window. I could also change the line style of the individual contours by again clicking on the line menu. And I could make it a short dash line if I wish. And I could even change it to a different color if I wish. I can increase the line thickness if I wish as well. And again, once I hit apply, OK, and apply, those changes are made. So maybe I don't want that. Maybe I just want to go back to an old school black contour. And in fact, I will do this for this example. I can leave the line width and that will be OK. Apply that and I'm back to where I was before. Other options would be if I want to add some color. Okay. And, a color map will speak to a person, perhaps better than a black and white map. It depends on the application. So again, if I want to keep a solid pattern, basically solid colors, but if I want to actually change the color from a grayscale to a color scale, I could do so. So if I put maybe a sign, if I click here on the left arrow, I can make the left side red, or basically the lower limits red. And as I get higher in elevation, I can make that a yellow. So I'll click on this icon right here and I'll make that yellow, right? And I'll apply that to the full data limits of 692 to 711. When I go ahead and click OK and apply, sorry, and now apply, I have a more colorful map. If I want to add maybe more color character in that map, I could go ahead and do so. So by holding Control click, I could add a couple more points, and then I could assign different colors to that point. Maybe on the left-hand side, maybe I want to start with a purple, migrating to a red, migrating to an orange, and then finishing in the yellow. And of course, I could change where I want those points to occur as well. Hit OK, OK, and then apply. And then again, I'm changing my map, hopefully to increase readability. So I'm going to leave this up to you to define how you want to define those colors. And of course, you could see that they're also shown here on the color scale. Another thing that we may also want to consider is labeling our axes. So on the left-hand side in this menu, I could label my bottom axis, my top, my left, and my right. So all you have to do is double left click on the bottom axis. I could give a title, and I could just call this here is the bottom axis, and you could assign any sort of offset or a format and any additional attributes that you wanted to, just like you would in Microsoft Excel. I could go ahead and apply that, hit OK, and it's actually here on the bottom of my screen. There it is. Here is the bottom axis. I could just go ahead and view fit to window, and therefore it will actually fit within my window again. If I want to label my left axis, much the same method. This is the primary, well, the primary Y axis. Of course, you wouldn't want to label it something so generic. You'd want to give it more of a specific label. Here it's at 270 degrees because it's going to be showing on its side. How far enough an offset do you want from these data labels, so on and so forth. So you could play around with the formatting here, and again apply it, and it looks good. If I wish, I could also add some notes or a title, maybe to the top I want to put in a remark, and if I do so, I could actually use the text tool, which is just above the navigation tools, to go ahead and do so. So my cursor changes into the text tool, and I could drop, here is a map title, for example. And I could change the characteristics of it. I could change the size, and I could change the color if I wish. Okay. And then when I go ahead and say, okay, there is my map title, and I can move it around accordingly, so on and so forth. Okay. So I'm just going to view fit to window again. And when you're presenting this data to somebody, of course, you'll want to save your data in case you want to work on this again. But for us, probably what makes more sense, if I want to incorporate this information into a document such as Microsoft Word, we're going to go ahead and use the snipping tool. Okay, so the snipping tool, or the snip and sketch, that's part of Windows 10. I'll just go ahead and I'll make a new one. And if you just search for a snipping tool or snip and search on Windows 10, you will find that you'll be able to get this tool, again, to snip out part of what you want. And then you could take this, you could copy this into a Word document. And here's one that I previously did. Again, maybe I'll just delete that one. And then I could just go ahead and repaste. And then I have my new map in the Word document. That's handy because when you're including it in a report, you don't have to give a client, or you don't have to give me the grid files, the surfer files. All that I really care about is the tangible result, which is the map. And use this and maybe save it as a PDF or whatnot when you're submitting your maps for your reports. Okay, so that's basically kind of it. You could play around with some of the other features of the scaling issues and whatnot, and feel free to navigate within the formatting options provided to you. But that is the basic tutorial on how to create a contour map with Surfer 8.